Today I'd like to talk about some ideas in client relations and how to interact more effectively with your clients. One of the things that I've been taught by a client of mine is to create a list of questions that you would want to ask of your client or your prospect. It reminded me of an airline pilot. One of the things I learned was that no pilot ever gets on or in the pilot seat without first having a checklist. The questions are in writing and they have to be answered sequentially, one after the other. Now, why do they do that? I mean, after thousands of hours as a pilot, one would think that they know it. Well, they do know it, but inadvertently they might forget something. And because of the safety factor, they have learned that they need to have that written checklist. Many people think that surveys are important for knowing how the clients feel. And in fact, many people talk about end of representation surveys. At the end of the representation, you send a long survey and hope that the client will answer it. If there's any problems, you will know about them. Unfortunately, though, you won't be able to do anything about it with this client. Maybe for the future client, but for this client, it's gone. It's the end of the representation. If they send back a favorable response, well, that's great, but okay, so what? A client of mine taught me a very important lesson, and the lesson was send out a survey 30 days after initial contact, or in effect, when you send out your first billing statement. It's at that point when the client gets the first billing statement that you can appropriately send them a short 4, 5, 6, 7 question survey that they're likely to answer. Now, what do you want to know in this survey? Well, you want to know, were they well treated when they called for the appointment? You want to know how they were treated when they came into the office. You want to know if they understood the fee agreement, whether all their questions about the fees and the representation were answered. Again, this is important information because if any of the negative comes out, you can deal with that right away and correct it and have a happy client. When does this really show up? It really shows up if, for whatever reason, you get before a disciplinary board of your local state bar. The thing that you will always be able to say if you have this kind of a survey is, I did my best to understand what the client wanted. Immediately on representation, we sent out a survey. The client sent back the survey saying everything was copacetic, everything was great. Therefore, whatever they're bringing now before the disciplinary board is likely just in order to avoid paying the fee. 2, they didn't send their survey back at all, did not answer the questions, in which event you can say that, well, you did your best. You asked the questions, they didn't respond. 3rd, they sent back the answers and they were all positive. In either of the 3 scenarios, the disciplinary hearing board is most likely to side on your favor rather than that on the client's, because it becomes obvious that the client is there only to avoid paying the fee. Another time that you want to have the survey, and I use that word here in quotes, is during the representation. At various stages in the representation, it seems to me that it's appropriate to ask the client questions like, and they can be verbal, they can be just, over coffee, however you want to do it. How am I doing? Are you being served the way you want? What can we do better? What should we be doing differently? How can we serve you more effectively? What is it that you need? These are the kinds of questions you want to ask, even during the representation. In fact, what I frequently do is say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best, where do I come out on your scale of appreciation for what I'm doing? There's a great deal of information you can learn from the client when they respond. It's this kind of communication that will help you be much more effective with your clientele. Again, thanks for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you in our next adventure.